Gather close, my cookie cutlets, my monsters of the milk, and let me weave ye a tale, a yarn that harkens back to ages long past, a time when the Frostworm was one of, if not the worst units in the entire game. The Frostworm, at that time, had no real role. It had bugged animations, it couldn't push through infantry, it couldn't duel characters or hurt cavalry, and it had a hitbox double the size of most other monsters in the trilogy, meaning it would constantly be attacked in the flank and rear, taking inordinate amounts of damage to even low-tier fodder troops in melee. It just couldn't kill anything, which is a problem in a game called Total War. This was March of last year, not actually very long ago, but oh, what a difference a year makes. The Frostworm is a lot better now, with almost all those issues having been rectified, and in fact, Anticity's won some recent tournaments, relying on them as the core of his strategy. They did receive a hefty 25 bonus for large at some point, but they seem solid for clearing out foot troops as well. Can almost be used like chariots, so just like 1 year ago, we'll be trying a build with two of them, led by Tzarina Katarin with Frostblades, Ice Sheet, and Ice Maiden's Kiss, and our battle line will be anchored by Da's Hearth Blades, with their big old great swords and stamina replenishment buffs, bonus for infantry and flaming attacks, as well as Boydanov's Brawlers, stealthy with really good melee values that suppress enemies from range, have a hefty dose of AP on their musket attacks. Bunch of Kislevite warriors, which are probably one of the best cheap infantry units in the entire game. Just a great unit to get some bodies on the field and hold the line with By Our Blood. Second Frostworm, and then the little Grom up front, which is a stable pick against Tomb Kings, I think. Very versatile unit. Most importantly, good for killing armored constructs, whether they be single entities or stuff like Necro Serpents. And in a matchup where traditionally you needed to have expensive Bear Cav, it feels like you now have a lot more options if you want to build an effective army versus Tomb Kings. Light War Sleds have been probably the best Kislev unit across all patches since the game came out. So yeah, very good roster actually for dealing with the Tomb Kings. And here they come right now, two Sepulchral Stalkers in the front. Very interesting unit. Mentioned it before, but one of my favorite balance changes was when they got accurate AP range attacks instead of the crappy slow split shot. They can force enemy cav and monsters into a tough situation on whether to charge into melee and fight their halberds and bonus for large, or escape to safety, thereby giving ground and space. So they take space really well. Settra has his Blessed Blade, Nair's Protection, Usurian's Vengeance. That one's seen a lot more play over last year. Very good spell for damage and slowing big units. And on the flank are the Necro Serpents, the Necropolis Knights with Halberds, and their 32 bonus versus large. Chosen of the Gods, Ushabti, some Tomb Guard, and a bunch of Scaly Warriors, and we are on Heorot Ridge, which has actually changed quite dramatically since Warhammer 2. This map used to look a lot different. The slopes on the sides of this ridge are way more pronounced than they were. There's a lot more elevation changes, and that can make for some interesting engagements out on the flanks. Got to be very mindful of your positioning here, especially when it comes to downhill charges or line of sight. And for the first time, these Sepulchral Stalkers have tipped their hand now where they're on the map, and that means they're in the fire arc of the Little Grom. This is what it's amazing for. If you can get a flank shot down the length of a Necro Serpent battle line, it'll do stuff like that. 3 or 4 models killed a shot. Very efficient way to apply pressure and start forcing mistakes, because people tend to start hurrying when their expensive constructs start taking big balls to the face, right? Remember, they are Stalkers, though. They will remain hidden as long as they're out of spotting range, so the big cannon can't keep blasting them all game long. And the Horse Archers want to do some scouting, while Settra gets aggressive on the other side of the ridge, runs directly into the Halberds, and gets slowed by Ice Sheet from Tzarina Katarin. Ambush has struck again. This time, the Sepulchral Stalkers were ready for it, and they'll mow down that front rank of Horse Archers. That was actually beautifully done. They feigned retreat, but they exposed themselves once more, and another big-time shot from the Little Grom, killing 3 or 4 additional models. Settra still causing some carnage on the other side of the battlefield. But yeah, you saw those Stalkers run away, and the Horse Archers were like, where are they? I want to get some vision to allow the Little Grom to start shooting again. They moved up right into their fire arc and got, well, they didn't get destroyed, but that front line, not too happy about how that one went. Lil Grom got another shot in, so even trade overall. In fact, Kislev might have a slight advantage here after killing about half that Sepulchral Stalker unit. Settra can charge Halberds. These are just low tier, not a problem at all. Just go in, strike them, run away, force out an Ice Sheet. Tzarina Katarin wanted to get a duel, but wasn't able to close the gap with the Chariot of Gods in time. And here come the Boner Boys. Lil Grom putting so much pressure on him, but it is now also being focused by the Chosen of the Gods Ushabti with their armor-piercing great bow. And in fact, has already lost a third of its health. I typically don't think of them as a sniper unit. Their split shot tends to be better on paper anyway against cav and infantry, while the normal great bows are more for single entity sniping. But my impressions on that may be skewed a bit because they are pounding the Kislev Great Cannon as these battle lines clash, and the war sleds move out to deal with the Necropolis Knights out on the flank, putting some pressure on them with some armor-piercing shots. Tzarina Katarin into the thick of the fighting now and already blowing through those skeleton warriors. And here come the Chariots. Settra leading the charge. Big time attack from the Katarin Chariots, bowling through the front line of halberds and into the back line, and on top of the Streltsy, Boydanov's brawlers getting tied up in melee. We'll see how they do against Chariots. They do have armor piercing and 45 melee attack, so certainly not bad at defending themselves in CQB. And here come Daz Hearth Blades with their Total War, whatever, scimitar, big ass sword, great weapon thing. Got a lot of bonus for infantry and very good base melee stats, so yeah, they'll carve through Tomb Guard or Skeleton Warriors in seconds flat, no problem at all. Really good chariot attack, and that might equalize those numbers a bit out on the left flank. Usurian's Vengeance on Boydanov's Brawlers. They're just going to try to get rid of the armor-piercing range fire. Makes a lot of sense. Already down to 2/3 health, and that will continue to drop while the Ice Wyrms, or Frost Wyrms, continue their rampage in amongst these skeletons and maybe look for some duels with the Chariots. They can definitely take out the Chariots very quickly. They're 25 bonus versus large, and in fact, a nice sheet from Tzarina Katarin, slowing their speed by 25%, and all those armor-piercing halberds and attacks in general has already dragged a single chariot unit down, and it looks like they are going to crumble out. In fact, the other unit is also about to die. The Necropolis Knights are into the back line, into Boydanov's Brawlers, which are just being punished and manhandled and bullied in every facet imaginable. Feel really bad for them. They're not going to get to do anything in this battle. But let's take a second to admire these dragons from the tundra, looking like quadrupedal spinosaurs. They are letting it go. Can't hold it back anymore. Let that storm rage on. The cold never bothered them anyway. Extremely cool monster unit. Cool, get it? But now that the Knights of Cobra Kai are into the rear, Frostworms need to change their priorities and start dealing with the bonus versus large constructs. Lil Grom tried to move into the forest to provide some protection against the Chosen of the Gods Ushabti, but they're not shooting at anything else. They want that little Grom dead, and it makes sense considering the opening stages of this battle. Double Frost Wyrm is pursuing the Necropolis Knights with halberds, and it looks like they have the engagement they want. Another ice sheet going down, hitting all three snake construct units. Stalkers are going to kind of present Katarin with that difficult proposition, though. Do you go in and engage them from the front and deal with their halberds, their bonus versus large? Or do you get shot up, or do you run away? And right now the Stalkers are kind of forcing her backwards, but she'll use the cover, actually, of the Necropolis Knights with halberds to block some of those shots, while the Daz Hearth Blades force the Stalkers back down the hill into the waiting arms of the light war sleds, who are popping off with their armor-piercing volleys. So the Stalkers are in a very precarious position now. The Necropolis Knights with halberds are dead, and that means the Tomb Kings need an extra X factor, and that'll be the Ushabti summon to just try to get some more armor-piercing troops in there, some more mass, some more melee attack. Settra is having a field day with these halberds on the other side of the battlefield. Doesn't necessarily want to engage them in prolonged melee, but charging in from the flank while they're already tied down by Tomb Guard or Skeletons is going to work great. Nir's Incantation of Protection, giving those Sepulchre Stalkers 40% physical resistance, which will help against everything in that fight except for the Frostworms, and that's frankly what's doing the majority of the damage right now. And Katarin tossing her compatriot an extra Frostblades for more melee attack and more armor piercing. Lil Grom has returned to the fold after getting shish kebabbed by those Chosen of the Gods, who are already at like 2,000 damage value right now. Tomb Kings have taken the top of the ridge, and now Kislev is fighting uphill, but their Frostworms are intact and alive, and they can disengage from here. They don't really have to fight Settra in and amongst a bunch of Skeleton Spearmen or the Ushabti, so they may look to retreat. Katarin is taking a lot of damage, and her morale has been shooketh a little bit. War sleds are ascending the hill, and may look to charge into melee with some of these unprotected Tomb Guard momentarily. We'll see what happens there. But Settra on his Chariot of the Gods is doing exactly what he's supposed to do, which is to get rid of all the infantry while there's foot troop support from his own side. As long as the Tomb Guard and Skeleton Warriors are still engaging the Halberds, he can freely charge in from the flank or rear and cause tons of problems. He's well over 150 kills at this point, and Katarin wants a duel with that Chariot, but might not be able to get it. Nero's Incantation of Protection is not going to be useful for Settra at this stage of the battle. The physical resistance will be completely bypassed by Frostblades or by just the regular innate Frostworm attacks, which are magical and will go through that physical resistance. And now they're going to start cycle charging this infantry. And this is what the unit used to not really be able to do, amongst other things, was get through Tomb Guard or just really any kind of foot troops in general, use that mass and kind of perform like a Kemrian War Sphinx. Now, they're not quite as good as a Kemrian War Sphinx at charging through infantry, of course, nor should they be. But when they get down ass to grass and start slip and sliding, they cut a swath of destruction through spooky scaries, no questions asked. And they truly are slippery. They are difficult to tie down. Perhaps more importantly here too, Settra does not have Jaff's Incantation of Cursed Blades. When you overcast that, it gives him bonus versus large, but he doesn't have it here, so he doesn't have his full dueling kit for taking on monsters atop his Chariot. Blessed Blade of Patra will help a lot, but he will lack bonus versus large, which may be needed to help deal with these Frostworms as another Ice Sheet and Ice Maiden's Kiss rip in from the side. And Tzarina Katarin is going to start being a force multiplier in these duels, while Settra is getting essentially 0 value from Nero's Incantation of Protection, which is being completely bypassed. The light war sleds continuing to apply pressure on Settra and the remaining constructs. Halberds pushing up. Tomb Kings have the numbers, but the balance of power is in favor of Kislev. Tzarina Katarin has 2,800 HP remaining. Other Frostworm is a little bit healthier. They're fighting back to back, and now the war sleds are into melee. A charge from the rear, causing an entire unit of Skeleton Warriors to start crumbling. Settra is in big time danger now. He's losing his bodyguards. Morale shocks are setting in. All kinds of debilitating crumbling hitting every unit on the Tomb King's side. He's going to have to work a miracle here if he wants to deal with the war sleds and the remaining Frostworms, which are frankly just kicking ass right now. And Katarin still has some useful spells here to cast on both. Frostblades, Ice Maiden's Kiss to clear out the remaining infantry. It might be a bridge too far, a hill too steep to climb for Settra the Imperishable, oh King of Kings. His curse did activate and it cleared out a bunch of the remaining halberds. Buyer Blood had already proc for them, so they routed off, and we can actually see Daz Hearth Blades and a unit of halberds down at the bottom of the hill, not being microed at the moment, so slight mistake. They should be charging up right now, but I don't think it's going to matter. The war sleds are completely surrounding Settra, and while Settra might be able to kill them off, there's no way he's dealing with even one Frostworm, let alone 2. That is going to be army losses. That is going to be your game. The Ropsman clan and Tzarina Katarin take the battlefield on the backs of those really impressive Frostworms. Now, neither one did insane in terms of value, but again, and we've talked about this many times before, damage value isn't the end-all and be-all of a unit. We saw them make a very large impact in that game. They were pretty much always exactly where they needed to be. They dealt with the Chariots, they dealt with the constructs, then they dealt with Settra in the endgame. War sleds were awesome at 2,000 value, and just in general, I think since Shadows of Change, Kislev is really well suited for dealing with the Tomb Kings. I don't know what like top level competitive guys would think about this matchup, but I think it might be hard for Tomb Kings. The addition of the Kislevite Warriors, cheap bonus versus large, it's unbreakable for a decent chunk of an engagement. The 25 bonus versus large added to the Frostworms and some other tools on top of, you know, Bear Cav and War Sleds. It's a lot to deal with. It's a very versatile army roster that has a lot of options for dealing with constructs, and it was a really good battle, but it was tough for Settra and his Necropolis Knights to make the impact that they wanted. Hope you guys enjoyed. See you in the next one. Peace out.